I'm Angie Mayr.
And I'm Eric Kruger, and welcome to this week's episode of Conservation Corner.
On this week's episode, we're going to tell you about the Land Conservation Division. The Land Conservation Division is part of the Land and Water Resources Department, and we work with rural landowners and producers to implement conservation practices such as waterways, farmstead practices, cover crops, filter strips, wetland restorations, and terraces. We use federal, state, and local funding to implement these practices.
And one of those programs that we're going to talk about today is the Dane County Continuous Cover Program. It is a pilot program. We actually are now in our second year of this program. It's what you want to call maybe a set-aside type program, a lot like what CRP is, if you're familiar with CRP. Like I said, we're in our second year. What we're looking at doing is converting what is normally annual crop ground, corn, beans, wheat, hay, that sort of thing, into more of a perennial cover. And by doing that, we're wanting to address a lot of resource concerns that might be out there: flooding issues, infiltration issues, erosion, wetness, buffering, and even wildlife habitat as well. So through this program, we offer a few different practices. We will offer cool season grass establishment. We're offering native prairie establishment, pollinator habitat, and then also another section of the program is conversion of cropland to a prescribed grazing system, which is pretty cool. Through doing that, we offer contracts with landowners and our division, our department, for a 15-year period to plant and establish the perennial cover, and then to keep it and manage it in that cover or in that system for a period of 15 years. As far as management of these sites, we're looking at mowing. Prescribed burning is an option. The prescribed grazing is also an option, like I said. So there's a lot of different options, but we're really hoping to address some of the concerns that are out there, especially in the recent years with the rains we've had, the flooding issues, erosion type issues, things like that. And we're hoping today to take you on a small tour of a few of these sites where we have implemented some of these projects just within the last year or two. All right, so this is a good example of a cool season grass mixture that we put in last year under the CCP program. I've been working with this landowner for a few years now on a number of different practices. This field here that you see here and behind me, and then the field behind me as well in the way background, he decided to take out of production completely. They're small fields, and apply for the CCP program. He was more interested in a cool season grass mixture for a number of reasons. Just the price of the seed, the utility of the grasses and the legumes that are in the mix for possible use of it when he cuts it and harvests it. So this specific mixture has a combination of clovers. I believe there is brome grass, Timothy orchard, maybe a few others, but it's a real basic kind of a pasture type mix. He seeded it last August, I believe, and it already looks really, really well here in May of the following year. This site specifically meets a few different resource concerns that we're trying to accomplish through the program. We have it's a good wildlife habitat for one. We already saw a turkey when we walked in. There are some ag ditches throughout the farm here. If you look and see the tree lines or the brush lines on the side here and behind me, those are all ag ditches. And so from the standpoint of buffering either wetlands or perennial water courses, this is a great practice to have on these smaller fields that might tend to get a little bit more wet more often than what they would want, and is more or less kind of a pain in the butt to seed every year when it does get really wet. And so this was a good site to put this type of practice in. So If you look around, the clover's coming in really well. The grasses are popping up through here. He'll probably mow it once or twice here this summer, just to kind of keep the weeds down and things. But then after that, he might cut and harvest it, once in August, but then that would be about it. He's got a use for the grass. He'll either bale it up or do something with it. And then this will be here for the long term, for a 15-year term. And he was real happy to get it in. Like I said, I've been working with these farmers for a few years now. They've also decided to put in some harvestable buffers, a different program that we work with here in the county. And we will show you a quick clip of that following this clip. All right, so this, like I said, this farmer implemented some harvestable buffers on his farm as well. This is the other side, opposite side of the field we were just on, but I wanted to show you an example of what we implement through the harvestable buffer program. You can kind of see behind me there's a grass strip that follows this tree line, which the tree line is one of the ditches I was talking about. This particular buffer is 30 feet wide, but if you look upslope, they're still cropping the rest of the field. So he's got a corn bean rotation, had corn in here last year. He buffered all the ditches throughout the whole farm. So there's a combination of 30-foot wide buffers, 60-foot wide buffers. The grass mix is actually the same mix that he used in the previous field. That worked out really well. He could just buy a ton of seed and put all these buffers and plant the fields in the same mixture. The purpose of these buffers is to reduce sediment, nutrient loading into our water courses. So main thing being phosphorus within the Yahara River watershed. We're trying to reduce phosphorus loading into our lakes and streams and whatnot. This is one of the good practices that we do have available to farmers, is buffering these streams and ag ditches to reduce that sediment and nutrient loading that comes off of the ag fields, the currently operated ag fields that are adjacent to these water courses. And so this is another good example of one of the good management practices that we do offer through the Land Conservation Division, as just another option for folks to implement on their farm. And again, this is another good way to still earn money on maybe some of these marginal areas that maybe don't produce as higher yielding crop as that they would like. So putting in a buffer strip, they're guaranteed an X amount of dollars on a per acre per year basis, whereas annually planting a crop, that's up in the air sometimes. And so this is just one of those good practices that we can offer to our producers.
All right, we're standing on a site today that is part of the continuous cover program. This site is a recent planting of a pollinator planting that they did with the continuous cover program. They opted to do this to help with the infiltration on the site. It's about 35 acres. As you can see behind me, there is some darker soils. This site has historically been had some water issues and some drainage issues. The last couple years they've been unable to farm the fields just with the water issues. They've been able to get some planting into the higher grounds. They thought that the native cover would allow for better infiltration and allow some erosion control for the 15 years. What you see greening up right now is a nurse crop or a cover crop that they planted with it. They planted oats, and what that's going to help with is getting something established during this first couple months while the natives are trying to get established. A few things that have been planted out here include bergamot and yellow coneflower and cup plant. All of those are going to have really deep roots and are going to help draw the water into the ground instead of allowing it to run off. And then it's also going to be really good wildlife habitat. Like you can hear in the background maybe some cranes. But then also where water is kind of ponding, you'll get some really good habitat for insects and frogs. And then you're going to get some, once the cover is established, you're going to get some really good erosion control. So when we do get some big rain events, you'll get, the ground is going to be protected for the long term and really help with the surface water. This area with pollinators, it's going to take a couple years for it to truly get established, so that's why they did the cover crop. That's going to green up probably quickly. As you can see, this was just planted last week and it's already starting to green up. They'll be able to harvest that first cover crop off and take that off as a commodity. So it's an economic value for them for that first portion, but then they're also going to get a rental rate on it each year for putting it into this program. And then it's going to benefit the neighboring farmers as a pollinator planting, because those bees and stuff are going to help pollinate the crops around it. Pollinator planting also is going to be good because it has something that's going to be blooming in the spring, something in the summer, and something in the fall. So it's really lengthening the food sources for our native pollinators, bees and moths and butterflies through the whole growing season. So this is just one example of type of cover that we can do under the continuous cover program.
Hi, I'm Marie with Dane County Land Conservation, and today we are at a farm in Stoughton that recently in 2019 enrolled in the continuous cover program, CCP, and they chose to utilize the prescribed grazing option of that program. And so behind me you'll see a smaller herd of beef cows. We're on a 40-acre piece right here. Just beyond the hill is actually, well, you can see one black and white cow out there, is a group of dry cows and heifers from the dairy. And so he's got two different groups of cows on 40 acres out here, and the idea is that the cattle basically get their own groceries. They go out every day. They're out all the time. Water is pipelined into the paddock. We've got permanent pasture in place, so permanent grass and legume cover. And cattle are moved every day to a different piece, which allows the grasses to recover for about 20 to 40 days depending on the time of year. So we always are going to be standing in real nice lush grass, anywhere from 6 to 12 inches tall. The reason that this is a good practice for both James and for the county to get involved in is that for James it saves him a lot on labor. He's not hauling feed, mixing feed, feeding cows, then turning around, collecting manure and spreading it back out. In a system like this, the cows go out, they get their own groceries, they spread their own manure, and they move on to the next pasture. The reason this is a good program for the county to get involved in is that it's hard to see here, but behind us we've got a bare crop field if we look the other direction. And that crop field that is in an annual system, which this was up until last year, has bare ground anywhere from basically end of October until early May, where nothing's growing. You have poor infiltration and the potential for a lot of soil erosion. And so what these permanent covers do is they keep the ground covered all the time with living root mass, which is really important for water infiltration, helps with flood mitigation, and then reduces nutrient loading into our local lakes and streams.